Welcome back to Finding Focus Talks. Today we are talking about God is moving, not only in our lives, but also our generation. And we get to witness that in multiple different ways. So we're just going to open it up and start talking about it. We just completed our first full year of college, which is, I guess, a big deal, right? I think. So I don't know. I can start off with like some different ways that I've seen God move this year. And I think the way that I'm going to talk about is that God hasn't moved really any different in this season. It's like a different font, but still the same thing, you know. And for me, it's been like, yes, the season has looked completely different. The last year's looked radically different than I could have ever imagined, to be honest. But God still acts in that powerful, wonderful, kind of confusing way that oftentimes I'm left in awe of, but also wondering what's going to happen next. Um, just to speak a little bit about it, the last however many months since September, I've been working with students at Grace Church and been going to school at the same time. And I just got a new role at the church, and it's really confusing me right now. But I'm really excited for it, and I just feel like that's kind of where the Lord continues to put us in spots where maybe it doesn't make 100% full sense, but it makes enough sense that is the next faithful step, right? And so I'm interested to hear in your guys' lives how God has moved in the past year, maybe some things that He's revealed to you, or maybe some things that have, just like I said, have been the same from the past, but just showing up in different ways now.
So I started off, I didn't really know anybody. I didn't go to college with anybody I knew. So it was a fresh start. And I think that, as I went through college and I started to figure out who I am, and a lot of that came through a challenge called Exodus 90. These two fellows over here did it as well. But it was kind of a point to where, because you're supposed to pair up with the group and have brotherhood, but I really didn't have that. I kind of just, thugged it out by myself. So I think through that process is just kind of me and God for a while, and just trying to figure out who I am. Because if I can't figure out who I am, I can't figure out, where I'm supposed to be. So I think that was a really important step throughout college, because I'm usually a pretty shy, laid back guy, and I'm starting to figure out that going out and meeting people and being myself and expressing who I am and putting my identity in Christ instead of trying to find a bunch of other things to put my identity in, but make it start there, is starting to help me try to express myself better. I don't know if that made sense or not, but that's something I've been kind of battling with. And throughout college, and my whole life, I mean, that's kind of been a struggle. But I feel like overall college is a really good experience for trying to figure out who I am, minus this last month. I don't know if it's whether that be burnout or trying to, figure out how to get into the word and how to pray, even when I don't have a single ounce in my body or mind, soul, and it just wants to go and do it. Like, just trying to fight through that. I know I experience it every year around this point in time, where it's like, okay, you're supposed to do this, even though when you don't really feel anything, you're supposed to keep doing it, because that's what faith is. Doing something that you can't see, believing in something that you can't see. And I think it also is believing in something that you can't feel. A lot of times we pair faith and feeling, but I think it's really important to fight through it and not run away when you're not having that feeling. I think that's something I'm struggling with and have continued to struggle with for my entire faith journey, because I feel like a lot of my faith journey, whether that be throughout college or just throughout these last 2 years of my life, it's been big moment, big moment, big moment. And then I get into these small moments, just my everyday life. I expect there to be this feeling. I expect there to be something there, but there's not. And I just have to keep fighting through that and run towards God, run into His arms, but I don't. I just try to run away, and, it just doesn't work. And I just finding something that does work, and finding that willpower and that almost belief. It's like, is it that I don't believe enough that I'm not, fighting through this and, continuing to to work and continue to go to God whenever I need it, whenever I don't need it, whenever I just need to like keep going throughout my faith life, or if it's just that is the temptation, that is the struggle that the devil's fighting me with. Like God knows I'm, at least thinking about it, and the devil is just freaking gnawing at me. But I don't know if you guys have any advice for that regard, but
yeah, I mean, I was sharing a similar thing with our priest or chaplain at Buckeye Catholic about how like sometimes when I fell like especially hard and like into sin or in doubt or in struggles like that, how not only would I fall, but I would also find myself like distancing myself from God further, because I like feels like I don't like I have no right to go back to him after what I've just done to him, like done to our relationship. And he was said to me, he was like, if you guys are both seeking out each other, if God is seeking you out, he can always, know where you are and know what's going on. But if you're in, like, he used an analogy of saying, like, if you're in a big open field and how to get to God, and he knows where you are, you can either run to him and embrace him, or you can run and hide behind a bush. And like when you find yourself hiding behind that bush, it's really hard because it feels comfortable, it feels like you are escaping from something, and it feels like you're like protecting yourself, and and that you don't have to like face the consequences of like stepping away from a relationship, maybe like some of the guilt and like the shame even. And I mean, I don't know if I really have great advice, because it's something I struggle with too, but I just think in those moments you just have to remind yourself that like God wants nothing more than to rid all the bushes from that field. And like he wants to see you. He wants you to come back to him. It's just like, it's hard to think that sometimes, because if you think about it in the context of a human relationship, if I were to like punch Noah in the face, you know what I mean? And I could do that if you want, but
I do not.
like if I were to punch Noah in the face, because we're broken humans, we would have this sort of rift in our relationship, at least until I was able to apologize and he was able to forgive. But the stark contrast between a human relationship and God's relationship is like, if I ask for forgiveness from Noah, he might not be able to give it right away. But like if I genuinely ask for forgiveness from God, like he can give it immediately, because he's all merciful, all powerful, and all loving. Not saying that you're not a merciful, loving, powerful person.
I'm nowhere near God.
So that's for sure. So that's what I would say. I think like you just can't forget that door is always open. You know what I mean? It's hard though.
Yeah, I agree, because it's like I know all these things, and it's like I look back to even to the point of where I first began believing. It's like he literally saved my life. Yeah, I still remain stagnant, and I still decide not to follow him at times, and I decide to, not keep pursuing him. It's like it's so hard to try to make sense of that, because it's like sometimes my brain just doesn't let me. It's like I have all the knowledge that I need to at least like believe and to have faith, but it's like it all becomes null. Like it just doesn't, I feel like it all just becomes empty for some reason. And it's like I try to keep moving forward, but I don't. It's like I'm petrified, and I don't even take that first step. I don't know if that's out of like sloth. I don't know if that's out of just not wanting to go face to face with my sin. Like I don't know exactly what it is, but it's weird having the knowledge to move forward but not being able to take a step.
It's like a stagnant moment. I think Jacob was talking about like you said you're like, you don't know if you have any like real solution for that stuff, but you mentioned shame. And I think that shame is like a big component on why people stop moving forward, why people won't face their sin, why people won't face God. They deal with a lot of shame. And for me, something I'd written a long time ago, dating back to, I don't know, beginning of the year, January, February time. I thought about shame. And I think that like the real answer, the real antidote to a lot of these problems is truthfully humility. And I think that if we're talking about where God is moving, I think God moves through humble hearts. I said it before on the podcast that like the Lord's army is made up of humble hearts. And I still think that's true. And I still will defend that. But I think that like without humility, like none of this matters. And like you have to remind yourself that you are just one tiny speck in the most beautiful painting of all time. And God placed you there in your spot. And earlier you were talking about like your identity and trying to fit in where you belong. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, no, he's right. And I thought about it in like the metaphor of a puzzle piece. And it's like God has a picture laid out for us. And that picture is made up of all these different puzzle pieces, all these different pixels. Well, if you have a piece that's a square and a piece that's a triangle, the piece that's a square can't pretend it's a triangle and try to go in that piece. You have to find where it is that God is calling you. And it takes all of us to fulfill that picture. Now, obviously, like I'm getting on a little tangent there. I just think that metaphor is worth sharing. That like you have to remind yourself that you are so much smaller than the big picture. And this is where humility comes into play. But a little thing about humility. If you guys remember the story of Adam and Eve in the Proto-Evangelium, the first gospel, is essentially what it's called. When Adam and Eve bite from the forbidden fruit, if you remember, they hide from God. Their shame leads them to move away from God, literally in the opposite direction. They're not moving towards God. They're moving away from them. And so I was thinking that like shame and humility are connected, and I think there's a spectrum. And I want you guys to follow with me because I think this is actually a really important thing. So on our spectrum, we have shame here, where you're like, man, like I'm just too afraid to like even face my sin, to face God. I'm just gonna like move away. Like that stuff just cannot find me. And if you go all the way on the other side of the spectrum, you deal with pride. Again, you're not facing God, but it's for a different reason. You think that you aren't just a speck in the picture or a puzzle piece. You think that you are the picture. And that is super dangerous right there. Pride isn't it called like the most dangerous of the capital sins? I feel like I've heard that before. But anyway, on this spectrum of shame and pride, somewhere in the middle is this golden mean of humility. And I think, again, like that is where the Lord works. And so like I was trying to connect this to the story of Adam and Eve. And so in the garden, like when they're tempted by Satan, pride tells them you can be like God. That's what pride tells them. And then after the fall, shame tells them to hide from God. Those are two different lies. And the gospel tells us the truth. You are not God, but you are deeply loved by him. So I think the way back to God in your situation, in all of our situations, because I think it applies to everyone, is humility. Because again, our spectrum of shame and pride, shame will tell you that I am not loved by God. Pride will tell you that I am my own God. Humility tells you I am not God. That kills pride. And it tells you I am loved by God, and that kills shame. So I think like as human beings and followers of Christ, we constantly have to remind us of those two core truths. One is that you are not God. The second is that you are so loved by God. And I think that is the way to humility. I think like genuinely humility is the antidote to so many different problems in our life and in our current day and age. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I truthfully think that I'm not saying humility is the answer to everything, but I think it's a pretty big step in the right direction.
Yeah. I feel like as a way to keep using that puzzle piece analogy is like I found my place in the puzzle, but my picture is blank.
Interesting.
It's like I don't know what exactly that picture is yet. I know there's a place for me in that puzzle, but my piece is blank.
I think, okay, continuing with the puzzle piece analogy, if you've ever put together like 1,000-piece puzzle, you will have so many puzzle pieces that are just the color blue, nothing else. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's not anything cool. It's not a pirate ship. It's not a castle or anything that the puzzle piece might look like. It's just a certain color. But when you lay all those puzzle pieces out, then you get the beautiful picture. So like, again, man, like you got to remind yourself, like, you're not the picture. But
Yeah.
if you remove that blue piece out, you can tell it's not there. And that's why you're important, you know?
It's true. Philippians 2, starting verse 1 says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in the Spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationship with one another, have the mindset of Christ Jesus, who, being in his very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." That came to mind. What, like, the whole puzzle piece thing, and what I just now with what's going on with that analogy. Even Christ knew his place in the puzzle, right? He was the piece that connected everything, right? And he had the piece that none of us could carry, right, or fulfill. But he knew his place, and what I love about that verse is he didn't try and do something else. He knew he was God, and his very nature was God, but did not try and do something else other than what he was called to do, to be the person he was called to be, and be the servant, in love, humbly as he did, right? And so, Braden, what I would say to you is, God is using this time. God is using this time. I've felt in that season so often, and I'm like, God, what's going on here? What are we doing here? Okay, I need to just get through the season and figure out. Let me get through the checklist of all the things to figure out here, and then I'll be able to go make an impact and go do this, that, whatever, and then God can work in my life and this, that. And it's just so wrong. It for us to say that that God only works when we have it figured out is really, it's prideful. It's actually in these moments that he works the most, and when you reflect on them, you're like, oh, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like, think back. I think back to the very beginning of my faith journey. I think back to the very beginning of your faith journey. Of like, those are probably some of the most confusing times. I didn't know what I was doing. You didn't know what you were doing. Now you look back in it and you're like, God did so much there. Yeah. And all you were focused on doing was being faithful. So what you have to have the expectation is the Lord is moving actively. God is using you actively in this season, right? And if you take on a passive mindset of, I did this episode with Tony Labigny where we talked about the healthy ministry mindset, and he would say there's like 4 quadrants, and they're all in the spectrum of your belief and how important God is in the process of doing something, and how important your part is in the process. And he'd say they're equally as important, because if you think you have a ton to do, if you're extremely important to the process but don't think God can do much with it, then you're just extremely prideful, and you're going to get burnout. You're going to be left. You're going to be left being like, "What the heck? I can't do this." You're going to develop a pessimistic mindset, or if you go, "God has a big part to play here, but I don't really have much to offer here," then you're just going to have no action, right? You're just going to be extremely passive. But if you really get that sweet spot of God has a big part to play here, and God is looking to use me, and I have a big part to play in this thing, then magically you get into a fully surrendered position of dependent and ready, right? I think of David, right? He came, he was like, man, there's no way that I'm going to take down Goliath unless the will of the Lord is with me. But I know the will of the Lord is with me. You know what I mean? But I still have a part to play. I learned in Bible school this year of like, we're like, I don't know if this is the right word, but we're like co-laborers with the Spirit, right? We're like partners with the Spirit. We have the option to deny the Spirit. The Spirit can actually, like Jonah's a perfect example. The Spirit can ask us to do something, and we can go run the opposite direction, right? And I know I've done that in my life at many times, right? But we have a big part to play. And so That isn't the hard part. Is kind of what we're talking about here is when you recognize God has something big to do and is looking to do that in my life, and I have a big part to play in that, but I don't feel like I'm ready for that. What that does should push you to the arms of the Father more, right? But if you get really zoomed in and narrowed in kind of on, oh, what is my purpose? What am I looking to do? And not looking at the holiness of God and who he is and the mission of God. Like if you stare upon the cross for long enough and stare upon and think about what heaven is going to be like in the kingdom of God and what God is looking to do, magically you start to think about, oh, well, obviously God is looking to use me. Right? But if you go narrowed in and you're like, God saved me, so now I need to do a bunch of things. Now you just put it all on yourself. That's like the opposite. It's like saying, it's like the John 3:30 of like a false John 3:30 of like, okay, he must increase, and while he's increasing, I have to increase so that I can match him. And it's like, no, like we have to. The more that we try and make Christ increase, the more we're going to understand that we're broken and fallen, right? So we're going to live in that tangent. And that's where I was kind of talking about at the very beginning of like, that's why I live my life so confused all the time. I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm a willing participant. That's the important part. I'm a willing participant that's going to work extremely hard and recognize that the Spirit of God that raised Christ from the dead dwells within me, right?
Yeah. I think talking about Jonah is really kind of funny to think about. I was thinking about the Old Testament when we were talking about this whole big picture. Like, one of the things that I always think about is like, imagine being one of those people who got liberated from Egypt but didn't make it the 40 years, like passed away along the journey. It's like, what a weird role that you played in that.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, they did play a role in this huge, gorgeous love story of salvation history.
Yeah.
And like, what did Jonah do? I mean, yeah, if you look at his life, it's a direct foretelling of what Jesus was going to do and do better.
Yeah.
He was swallowed up for 3 days and then he returned to succeed in Nineveh eventually, foretelling how Jesus would, be the new Jonah, or how Jesus becomes the new Adam, the new Moses, like in all those ways. Like you just have to be able to understand that at the end of the day, when you can fully rely on Jesus, like the unaccomplished can be accomplished. And I just think that's so cool. It's really, really a beautiful thing to realize that, like, I hesitate to say equal because I don't like, I try to be like, feel like I don't think it's my place to say that necessarily, but like in the same way that all those people that we can read about in the Old Testament played a part in God's master plan, we also have a part. Like, so it's just like it's a humbling thing to know because we're so little and our name isn't going to be in a book like that. You know what I mean? Like the sacred book like that, but yet we are still valuable and used. That's pretty beautiful, I think.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool because like if we think of like God as like the author of like our lives, the author of our world in literature, most authors do not create characters that don't have a purpose. And even if it doesn't look like they do, they still have a purpose, like speaking like in a literary way. And so like most writers don't include something that doesn't belong in the story. Otherwise, that's just meaningless words on a page. Yeah. But like the thing is like, yeah, like me and Jacob, we haven't been swallowed up by whales. We haven't led people to the promised land. We haven't built any arcs. But man, like God still thought that he and I deserve to be in the story. And like that matters. Like those words on our page matter. And like every single one of those pages, like man, it creates the best book in the world. And like that best book is God's plan, his plan of salvation, his plan to bring us into everlasting life, everlasting like love in his kingdom. And again, every character matters because he didn't have to create us, but he chose to. Like you can't waste that. You can't waste that in shame or pride or being stagnant. Like no, God calls us to dwell in him.
I think that to go kind of back to like how we've seen God work, to relate that whole, idea that we've been dwelling on to how I felt like the end of my year really played out. I think I really had a moment where I realized like how moments stack upon each other. So one of the Focus missionaries who works at Ohio State, this guy Jacob Dalton, the absolute man. If he for some reason ever listens to he's the man. But he hosted some of our like guys in our Bible study and stuff like that to his house for a bonfire to kind of close out the year. He's moving on from Ohio State, unfortunately, on to big and better things, obviously. But we were just kind of sitting around there, grilling some hot dogs, laughing a lot. But then we started talking about like how do we see God work in like huge ways for us? Like what was like a defining moment for us this year? And obviously I had big moments like, I went to the Sikh conference in Columbus, surrounded by like 17,000 other young Catholics. And I had some like pretty profound moments there. But when I think about that, like, well, at the same time that I had something powerful that happened there, I also had something powerful that led me there. And I had something powerful that led me to that moment. And like at the end of the day, it kind of boiled down to meeting Luke Harlow, who is this might be like 4 pods in a row that we've mentioned Luke Harlow, but like I could trace it back throughout the whole school year. Like if I didn't meet Luke after going to like probably the first weekend of masses, then I wouldn't have been invited into a Bible study. I wouldn't have been invited into discipleship. I wouldn't have been told about Seek. I wouldn't have known about Focus. I wouldn't have gone to this conference. I wouldn't have grown closer with these people. And I wouldn't have ended up sitting at Jacob Dalton's backyard, grilling hot dogs and having a great time with my best friends. I just think that like, as we've gone through and talked about it, I think that topic is just very true to my life. Like the moments stack on each other, and like you can't have one powerful moment without the one that led into it. You know what I mean? And I think that's, I don't know, we kind of talked about it in the other podcast, but just the beauty of reflection, the beauty of the intelligent mind that we have. Like I said it last time, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's funny. Whereas like in a life, the squirrel just looks for the next nut. Like we can just reflect upon all the times that we've, searched for something and found it and what that led into next. But we just have like this beautiful gift of being able to reflect on life and learn deeply from it. Because it's not like every moment was perfect. I had the hard moments that had to wake me up too, to get me to Seek eventually. Like when I had to, stomach some of the bill and pay for some of it when I really didn't want to. But, at the end of the day, like it was worth it. Like that's a beautiful thing to be able to reflect on.
Yeah. Deuteronomy 8, starting verse 2 says, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Know then in your heart that a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you." And what I love is that it starts with remember. Remember how the Lord has led you all this way in the 40 years and has provided for you and put you through this because he loves you. And so often we're just like in a culture that seeks highs, seeks impact, seeks opportunities and things that they can show off and talk about to other people. But man, like some of the most memorable people in history are the people that did the mundane things extremely well with love, and did not get noticed in their lifetime. And so, and I think back to, I think, oftentimes they thought back to on that. They just thought about how the Lord has provided for them and how good he's been and how they should just continue to trust, even though in a moment where it's maybe not feeling like, man, there's no mountaintop moment here. But like someone in my life says, the grass is greener where you water it, right? And oftentimes we think, oh, once I get to this point, then it's going to be great, right? But no, like where you are, where God has put you there, it's there for a purpose. Be faithful to that, right?
I don't know. I really like this topic of reflection. I feel like that's something that should be encouraged more in Christianity, because like God gave us the ability to remember, to look back, and to reflect, and to appreciate that. That's something that we have over probably every single other animal in the world. Whereas like the squirrel, as he said, is looking for that next nut.
Yeah.
Man, we can look back and see everything we've done. When we were in prayer right before the podcast, like we always do, I was thinking back when you were praying about like sophomore year of high school. I was late to my English class, Brit Lit, and every seat was taken up. All the kids had gone off to lunch, and so I was just trying to find an open seat, and I found one in the corner of the room. And so I put my books there and went off to lunch. And so it turns out that the kid I actually sat behind was this guy. And we weren't friends up until then.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. But like, man, that year was just so transformative. Is like, it led us to become better friends. Even if we weren't like best friends in that moment,
Yeah.
it was so pivotal to leading us to becoming like brothers, like that moment has led to like a lifelong friendship that's just going to continue for hopefully the next like 60 plus years.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was just thinking like back to our puzzle piece analogy. That day, that tiny day, it was like, I can't even remember the date. That's how like minuscule that day really was. But that moment is when two of those puzzle pieces connected.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no idea.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you have puzzle piece A and puzzle piece B, you can't tell what they look like at all. You put them together, you start to see the shape of something.
Yeah.
And I think like the shape of our faith started to form.
Yeah.
And that was something that we were able to see. And I pray that like other people were able to see that these two puzzle pieces, like they started to create God's image. And then when you add on more of these puzzle pieces, you get more of the image. And like, think about all the amazing friends we have. We've done incredible things with the response, with our prayer nights, with everything we've done. Like God was just going, all right, puzzle piece there, let's put them together at this moment. Man, like it's just so cool being able to look back and be like, wow, we had no idea that the puzzle was being created then. And
yeah,
it absolutely was.
Yeah. I think this guy loves those puzzle pieces.
I do.
Well, and to bring another side of it, of like with the whole puzzle piece analogy, it took
Look who likes it now.
it took time for our first faith conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That time in between
Took December.
time in between was not wasted, right? In the same way, Braden, like we were put in the same mentor group freshman year, so same class freshman year, and our first faith conversation wasn't till sophomore year, where you told me you don't believe in God when we were golfing on the golf course, and then junior year we invite you to be on a Christian podcast, right? And so, was the time in between wasted? No, not at all. It was God moving, for bending the universe to interact with you and set it up. It was throwing the perfect lob, and I think I love how you highlighted the fruit that comes out of that. It's like almost an exponential. Like you start to put those together, and magically, it's like, now let's use the puzzle piece analogy. 4 puzzle pieces right here. We can all grab another puzzle piece or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's all connected.
You know what I mean? And that's what we did with the response and with our prayer nights in different ways. And what we take out of that is not oh man, like we're so great when we're together. It's look how great the Lord is. Like we get to see a fuller picture of the Lord when we're together. That's why I've taken away from all of our prayer nights and the ways that we've gathered together. I've been in awe of who God is and how he moves and how he interacts with us. And so, for anyone listening right now, I think if you have not reflected on the past few years, past few months, even past few weeks, then I think you're missing out on something the Lord's doing in your life. I can confidently say that because, again, he does not waste time. And you actually might be running the opposite direction of what he's looking to do. But take the time and see, Lord, what are you looking to do in my life? And I am confident that he's looking to show you that. And I think that comes through reflection. That doesn't come through the Morgan Freeman voice that opens up the sky and says, blank name, here's your purpose for your life, or here's what I'm doing in your life. It comes through, look at what I've already shown you. Look at the fruit that has been coming. Look at when you go and do this thing, it always goes poorly and you always get hurt. I wonder why. Maybe you're not supposed to go there. It's like the Israelites, you know what I mean? Every time you go and worship the false idol, what happens? You know what I mean? It's not that read the Bible. Every time they turn away from the Lord, things start to get worse for them. And maybe at a time they don't even realize that, but eventually they hit that point where they're like, oh crap. And so I think it's a great time that we're doing that right now. I think I encourage anyone listening to take that time and just really sit with the Lord and say, what have you been doing? Maybe what am I missing? That's something I've been asking myself recently. What in my life am I missing? I miss things every day that the Lord's trying to show me. I truly believe every interaction I come into, every part of my day has a purpose in it. And so many times I go from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, and I never pause to see what the Lord did in the last thing. And I'm like, man, if the Lord was trying to tell me something there, I just missed it because I chose to be busy. And I don't know about you guys, that's really disappointing. And so I've been trying to pray throughout my days and take moments to really see, Lord, what did you just do in that last meeting I was in? Lord, what did you do in that last interaction I was in? Lord, can I pray for that person that just told me that really heavy thing, or maybe that really joyful thing? Just stuff that we don't think about because we're so focused on, well, I have to get through all this stuff so then I can get to the big thing and then I can glorify the Lord. It's like, no, you're glorifying him right now. You have that power right now. The Spirit of God dwells within you right now.
Yeah, I think it's important, I guess, bringing us back to that puzzle piece analogy. It's important to look at, what pieces fit together, but also when a piece doesn't fit, right? I mean, how many times when you're doing a puzzle, you realize, oh, that doesn't go there.
Yeah.
Right. And realizing that in your reflection is like, okay, learning from this moment and those periods of, okay, it's not that the Lord isn't working here. It's just I have to figure out, okay, look at that puzzle piece, what isn't fitting, right? And reflect that way. And instead of just, this is everything that fits, but figuring out also what doesn't fit.
Yeah, I really like that you brought that up. I was thinking about this time when you mentioned that about what pieces don't fit. So last year, my family went on vacation, and we were there for a week. And my sister bought this 1,000-piece puzzle set, and so everyone in my family worked on it throughout the week. And I'd say I'm probably the least intelligent person in my family. Like, everyone is super analytical, super smart, and I'm just an average Joe. Well, anyway, I was working on the puzzle piece, right? I was working on the puzzle set. And I had these two pieces I thought fit together. And so it looked like they fit. So I'd started literally just push them together and try to do everything I could to force them fitting. But fact of the matter is, they didn't belong together. And I kept trying to force something that wasn't supposed to be there. And so a lot of times, you think that you can create your own puzzle, or you think that you know what it is, and you can't try to force things to happen. If you force something to happen, all you're going to do is break that puzzle. You're going to break that image. In the same way with me, I took these two pieces, tried to force them to be together. I ended up breaking them, Yeah. So it's like, you got to be careful with what you're doing. You might think you're right, but turn to the knowledge and wisdom of the Lord, and you'll start to see what pieces actually fit together. Shoot, maybe I'm not supposed to take this job offer. Maybe I actually am supposed to do this thing with this person. You know what? Maybe I should show it to this friend's podcast that he invited me to be a part of, and watch how the puzzle pieces fit together, and watch how the image of the Lord is shown through that.
Yeah, I think too, another funny kind of idea with the puzzle is have you guys ever been sitting down doing a puzzle, and you're just staring at this one piece, man, where does this go? Where does this go? And then the person right next to you picks it up and they're fits it in right away. They see it right away. Because my first thought when Braden said that idea about you can't force two together when they don't go together is why didn't I think of that? That's a great idea. But I was like, because I wasn't supposed to. Like Braden was the one who had to find that. Like that's the way it made sense. That's how the conversation had to develop. It's just really cool.
It's so cool. It shows how like each person has a purpose. You know, I like to think that everyone does. You know.
Yeah, I like to also think that.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's like some people, I don't know. A lot of people will be like, man, I don't have an identity. I don't have a purpose. Like you think that you're just some biochemical mass of like reaction and like organic material. And like I look at that and I said, no, you're worth more than that. You are a puzzle piece in God's plan. You know.
Yeah. That's a pretty big deal.
It's a huge deal because you remove that piece. Now you can't see the picture clearly.
Yeah.
And like what you said too, when you put all those pieces together and stuff like that, or like when we all come together, you start to see like the image of the Lord. And like we are told that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And that means each one of us here display a different characteristic of God, whether that's something physical or internal or whatever it is. And that's so cool because that means if you take all 8 billion people, put us all together, you see how the different qualities that God placed in us start to point to see him. Yeah. Like, how cool is that?
True. I think that's the big importance of sharing your faith and sharing the gospel, is because when you share your faith, we all have these different experiences. We all have different purposes. And when those all combine, like you said, they form this great picture. And it's the same thing with sharing the gospel. Like, this is something that Nick and I are starting to figure out through our series, which we haven't done in a really long time. But just like the way that people can look at scripture and, you know, pick up something else that I didn't pick up, like something that Nick reflected on after a reading that I didn't see at all, is exactly what Jacob was talking about. And I think through both sharing your faith and sharing, you know, the gospel, how much that helps paint the picture.
Yeah. Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I remember that happened with that one writing post. Remember?
Yeah.
The one, like I was working on writing posts, which you guys should read if you're not tapped in.
Or
Instagram. Follow the gram. Like I was calling Nick about this passage that I was writing about and my ideas, and he's like, "What about this?" And I was like, "I didn't even like think about that." And that I don't even want to pull it, like go into it, because now that I think about it, it definitely is another thing that could easily go into the puzzle piece analogy. But it's like, I'm saying like the verse itself even is just like very characteristic of the puzzle piece analogy. But
It's a puzzle piece, man.
yeah, I think it's really beautiful. It's a great point.
Yeah. I think I was reflecting on this recently of like, the thing that I've seen that work the most and bring the most people to Christ in my life is people just sharing their testimony. Not even like sharing, like, I think when people share their testimony, they're sharing the gospel, and people can see the gospel more clearly, or in a different lens through someone's testimony. They can see the real life application. I think of the early days before the Bible was written, and the New Testament letters and all the different things. The gospel was, I walked with this man. He did these things. He died and rose, and now my life has been forever changed. That's just them sharing their testimony. That is the gospel. And so a lot of people are like, share the gospel, and they're like, Jesus died. You are a sinner. Jesus died for you. He raised from the dead so that you can have eternal life. Amen to that. I agree with you. How does it affect your life? I think that there is so much power in the gospel and what that part you just said, but give them the application, give them the thing of how it's transformed your life. People care about what you care about. Like, people can feel when you care about something. Yeah. And so for me, what I was going to say is, I've watched in my life, and I think you guys can attest to this, the times that I've seen people grab onto the gospel the most is when people have just shared their story and how the gospel has changed their life. I've seen it. It works. Like, I've seen people that don't even know how to speak in front of another person be able to share their story in the most mumble jumble way, and people will weep over it.
Yeah. I mean, all that kind of just goes back to what Noah was talking about earlier. Like, why would an author create a character that, you know, doesn't matter? I mean, are we not just a continuation of this? Are we not just another character in the story? Like, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, I think it's really cool. And like, the topic technically is like how has God been working these last 5+ months or whatever, however long you want to date it back, and tying in what you guys have been saying. So every Tuesday night in downtown Columbus, I go and volunteer with some other kids, other adults too, with this church. And we go and try to help the homeless. We walk around, give them some food, give them a fresh pair of socks, some water. But more importantly, we give them company. We give them someone to talk to, someone to pray with. And I've seen how it's genuinely impacted not just those people's lives, but also my own. And one time we were about to get sent out. And so there's this guy named Colin, and he usually gives us like a little speech before we go out there. He's got this big, deep voice. And I remember one time he said something. I won't forget it. He told us, he was like, remember, you might be the only Bible someone reads. And that really stuck with me. Like, dude, wow. Like, you always bring up how the same Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead lives in believers. And like, here I am, a messenger for the Lord, here to advocate for the best book ever written. And like, that's on me. Like this little puzzle piece finally has its chance to, show a little bit of the picture. And I don't know, that just really stuck with me. I think another thing too, relating to that, with this service thing. So one time I was moved from outreach. Those are the people who walk along the streets and try to help the homeless people, which, if you don't know, Columbus has a very large homeless population. But one time I was actually in the church. And so instead they brought a lot of the homeless people there to hear like a little testimony. And we got to hear a testimony of a person who was formerly on the streets. And anyway, she stops giving her testimony, and they open the mic up for anyone who wants to go up there. Whole church is just packed with these homeless people. This mom, first time ever going to the church, has these 3 little kids, and they're all just playing, talking, laughing while the speaker is talking. But the mom goes up there, takes the mic, and starts like talking about how she wasn't sure how she was going to feed her kids that night. She didn't know what was going to happen. She didn't know how God was going to provide. And she just breaks down in front of everyone and just starts crying. Well, anyway, it was such like a impactful scene that they started to actually move people out of the church, which I feel like was kind of the wrong thing to do. But who am I to disagree with, the people there? Well, anyway, as I'm walking out, I just look at this mom. I turn and look at her daughter, who was probably 7 years old. And this daughter's mom is just crying. And she looked at me. She didn't even smile or anything, but she just like waved her hand and like was just being friendly with me. And like, it sounds like nothing, but dude, that little moment of kindness that homeless girl displayed towards me, like just had me crying. Like, I don't know where the tears came from, but it was like some people, man, when they just have nothing to give, they just give their love. And like, that's enough. It's enough to penetrate the hearts of like all men. So I think like, I feel really called to talk about that experience with like that homeless family, because I never really talked about it before, and I wish I had. And I feel glad that I'm doing it now, because like, dude, you want to talk about how the Lord is moving? Man, that moment, I just like was so impacted by this little girl's action.
Yeah. I think too, something that has been weighing on me a lot recently, progressively in a lot of different moments, is just like the, albeit hard, but beautiful nature of the Christian view of suffering. And how, like, I guess I'll go into that in a minute, but these people, like she is suffering. Her life is hard.
Yeah.
The person who shared their testimony, her life was hard, still is in different ways, And I think that's a kind of a general theme when you hear testimonies. I mean, not everybody, I don't want to put everybody into a big ball, but everybody can, or most people can generally say like, this was where I was really hurting in life. This happened. This is where I found a lot of healing in life. And I think that like to really see how God works, it is like God works in suffering. And that's just a matter of fact. As hard as it can be sometimes, like Christ, the most perfect, the most good, suffered the most. And like when we as Christians rightly struggle with the issue of like, you know, if like why should bad things happen to good people? Well, the worst thing happened to the best person. And if we can embrace that mindset, like that can just do so much. And I think that's now to go into like some of the cultural issue is like, I feel like the culture now just generally like as if we can reduce suffering as much as possible, we're going to go that way. Like we don't have to do schoolwork anymore. We got AI. AI can do it all for us. We don't need to be bored anymore. We can just go on our phones and solve that immediately. We don't need to deal with depression, anxiety anymore because there's things called assisted suicide. Like that's so heartbreaking as somebody thinks like unfortunately is misled that because things are hard, there's not good brought out of it. And it's just, I hate to say it, it's just not true. And like it hurts that these people haven't, you know, been have that shared with them. Like they probably didn't have a person who really reached out or invested in them when they needed it. And they don't have that understanding. And it's just so sad. But like to try and bring it full circle, it's like if you can't find a way to embrace the suffering, like you're going to really struggle to find the way that Christ works. So I don't know. Do you guys have any advice on that to maybe make it more practical? Like how people can deal with suffering or embrace suffering? I don't know, putting you guys on the spot is a hard
I
one.
think first, do you guys have anything you want to say?
Like I've said this before, but I think practical is I praise the Lord for the anxiety that I have had to face in my life. Like I think it's shaped who I am in my dependence on the Lord. But with anything in life, it's not just suffering. Anything that is good can be turned bad. It is a choice. God has given us a choice, just the same way suffering really is a choice. And that sounds cliche, and that but there's a choice to be made in there. I'm not saying the suffering that you're experiencing is a choice, because there's things that happen to us that just you can't prevent.
Yes.
Let me clarify that. But the way that you handle that suffering is a choice, right? You can take on the mindset of, man, just nothing good is going to come out of this. My world's ending. There's no way that anything can be redeemed, but God has obviously shown through the cross that it couldn't be further from the truth. Noah always quotes, "My perfection is made perfect in your weakness," right? Or my power. I don't know. I forget the verse.
Oh, yeah, you basically got it.
Yeah. And so, what I would say the practical advice is, like, when you're experiencing suffering in your life, what is your mindset going into it? Are you just going to have the thug it out, David Goggins, pain is good for me? Or are you going to have, man, this sucks. I'm going to grieve this. I'm going to process this. Was there something I did wrong here? What is the Lord trying to teach me in this? And how can the Lord use me in this? Because, man, some of the most powerful moments of my life have been when I've watched someone in the midst of extreme suffering choose the Lord and watch to love other people. It's just what Noah said.
Yeah.
And so to me, I think the practical wisdom is like, just love through it, love in it. Love is a choice, right?
Yeah.
And I think suffering, what it really does, and I think Job does it really well. That book portrays it really well. Suffering shows the boundaries of your love. If you have boundaries in your love, suffering will bring them out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But Christ showed that his love had no boundaries.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, man, when I experience love, what's my response? Where are my boundaries?
Yeah.
And when I see those boundaries pop up, man, I got to cut them out.
Yeah.
Because I'm called to love like Christ loved, and he loved without boundary.
Yeah. And I think too, like I kind of meant to say this when I was ranting a little bit, but if everything was always perfect and everything always went well, like you wouldn't be able to differentiate that.
Yeah.
Like that would just be like a monotone grayscale life you would live.
Yeah.
But like we can recognize like the good, beautiful moments because we have the hard, ugly moments.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
like it's kind of goes in the same way that like you think about free will and God's nature. Like his love would mean nothing if we were just automatically programmed to love him perfectly. But since we have free will and we choose him, then it shows that he loves us enough to allow us to make that choice.
Yeah.
And that's what takes it from being like a, robotic forced path.
Yeah.
To being a beautiful thing that you can opt into and like learn how to appreciate for the better.
Yeah, it's like less of a program and more of like evolving love, and that love
Yeah.
like changes and adapts and winds through everything else going on in life. But is life fair? Not at all. If it was, we would all be in hell. But life is good, and because of that, someone decided to take upon our suffering and give us a shot at eternal life with God. If it was fair, man, like Jesus wouldn't have to do any of that.
I think like to wrap us up here, I think like I go back to the witness of like I love the quote that like life is not fair but it's good, in that it's good because God is good, in that life comes from him, right? He's the way, the truth, and the life, right? And so I would love for anyone, probably the one person that has made it to the end here, if you've made it,
Not even.
maybe not even,
It's probably Braden's grandma.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
if you made it to the end here, I would love for you to drop in the comment section below, or DM us or whatever it may be, and just tell us how you've seen God move in your life. There's nothing more powerful than a witness. So, a witness of the goodness of God. So we'd love if you would do that, if you are listening. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I think I had one final thought. I think too, it's that in suffering, there's like Christians are also blessed with having this teaching and this beautiful value and hope too. Like they're like,
So good.
if there was suffering without hope, like that would really just
Would be cooked.
stink. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't complete the circle. You know what I mean? But when we're in those hard moments, like, I always think about early senior year. We were just kind of getting kicked in the teeth. It felt like spiritually and emotionally, physically, all of them.
Every way.
Yeah.
But like the whole time, however hard it was, like I still had that confidence that eventually, like the corner would be turned. Like we would turn the corner, and life would start feeling like life again. But the fact of the matter is, it's all points on a timeline. It's a beautiful thing.
And what I love about that is now we look back at those moments and we're like, man, that was awesome.
It was needed.
It was needed.
It was needed.
It's so needed.
Took one trip to Brandywine Falls to just change our perspective.
Yeah. I remember literally
That's
telling you.
sticks and stones.
I remember telling you guys, I'm like, we need to stop thinking like this.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And then we saw the little cross.
Gosh, yeah.
All the cool things. But
Cool.
it's just how. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, this episode's a wrap.